Hey everyone, Jacon Wuwert from the National Sports Media Association. I'm here today with Minnesota 2022 Sports Writer Winner of the Year, Patrick Reusse. Thank you for being here with me today and congratulations on your award.
Thank you very much. I'm proud to be going in with Andy Greer, one of the young superstars of the St. Paul Pioneer Press. So that's which is one of my alma maters, by the way, the St. Paul Pioneer Press. So congratulations to Andy too.
Awesome. How did you get started into this business?
I became a copy boy at the age of 17 before I was going to the University of Minnesota at the Minneapolis Tribune. And that's what we called them back then, copy boys. And we took scores and worked 3, 4 nights a week. And then in my what would have been my junior year in college, I took a job at the Duluth News Tribune as a sports writer for the kingly sum of $76.08 a week. I couldn't resist that pay. That was in January of 1966. So I've been in it ever since then. I was in Duluth for 4 months and St. Cloud for 2.5 years before I ended up getting hired at the St. Paul paper in September of 1968. And I've been in the Twin Cities ever since.
Awesome. What do you think separates you from you and your peers?
Oh, I don't know. Now it's probably being a lifelong Minnesotan who knows every corner of the state and knows a lot of history. And I always say job security for me is writing obits on people other people don't know, old sports figures from my youth. That I don't know. I have a kind of a casual attitude about whether a team wins or lose. I'm one of the old time guys who's see myself as fully objective, and that I don't. If I go to a game and the home team wins or the home team loses, it doesn't make any difference to me. Just whatever the best angle is, and that's kind of the old journalism approach. And I guess maybe that isn't 100% what the case is today. Although I do I admire the young sports writers and all the stuff they have to do for the internet as well as for the newspapers. When I started, I wrote for 2 newspapers, but that was it. There was nothing, there were no blogs, no anything like that. So I'd say it's harder work for the younger guys than it ever was for me.
Dang. How did you get to where you are right now?
Oh, I don't know. I guess I was working in St. Paul in 19 for 2.5 years, and kind of an odd story. They came up to me and thought, this was in a day when you're not making any money, and you're just if somebody offers you an extra $25, you take the job, and they told me they were going to train me to be the sports editor for a couple of years because a guy named Ken Murphy was retiring at the St. Paul Pioneer Press in a couple of years. Well, Ken died about 3 months later, suddenly out of nowhere, and they made me one of the most ill-prepared sports editors in the history of the man. I was 25 years old, and I was all my drinking buddies that were my peers. So I stayed there for 3 years, and then I had a chance to go on the Twins beat in 1974, which was always my goal anyway. And I covered the Twins for 5 years, and then they made me a sports columnist for the afternoon paper in St. Paul, the St. Paul Dispatch. Everybody had morning and afternoon newspapers back then, and I started off writing columns for the afternoon paper, and it went from there.
Awesome. What inspired you to go down this path?
Oh, I was a sports nut my whole life. I grew up. My dad ran the baseball. We have this thing up in Minnesota, town team baseball, which is you got some of it in other places, but it's extremely unique in Minnesota. There's 250, 300 teams in Minnesota. Other states might have 50 or 60. And my father ran the team in Fulda, Minnesota, little tiny town down in southwest Minnesota. And he was just a baseball nut, a sports nut. And I learned it from him. And I heard a story later from my brother long after my dad was dead that the way I got the job at the Minneapolis Tribune was he knew a guy named Ted Peterson, who was the outstate reporter for the sports section. And he called up and told him he had a son who was completely incompetent in all areas, such as building things or mowing things or building things, who the only chance he had for survival was to get a job in sports. And because I was a sports nut. And Ted got me the job as the copy boy in August of 1963 before I went to the university. And that was that. So I've been on that path since the day I walked in the Minneapolis Tribune in August of 1963. I was in there about 2-3 days, found this collection of great old characters, newspaper guys, a lot of giving each other a lot of abuse, but in the most friendly way ever, and then going and drinking beer together afterwards. And I just kind of fell in love with it immediately.
Awesome. Who would you say you look up to in the business?
Oh, incredible number of people. There was, as a writer, of course, I had the opportunity to sit next to Red Smith at a World Series and a Super Bowl, and he was always the guy you went to and look at to see how he would humorously describe some great event in history. I got to know him just a little bit. He probably didn't know who I was, but I got to sit next to him for a World Series and a Super Bowl. A lot of guys, a lot of old ball writers were heroes of mine. There's an example of the great old ethic. Bob Ryan's a retired, I'm sure he's won your award many times from the Boston Globe. And I was covering the Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire home run shootout next to him. And we didn't know if one of them was going to hit the home run and break the record that night or not. Bob came to the ballpark. He'd written a column each way that he could just change. He'd already written 2 columns. One if McGwire gets the home run, one if McGwire's not. And I remember being extremely impressed with that because the rest of us were set. The rest of us were sweating out deadline, and all he had to do was put in 4 graphs into some column. But just amazing number of reporters. A good friend of mine, Mark Wicker from Orange County, used to be in Philadelphia. Fantastic writer, fantastic idea man. Jerry Fraley, who died unfortunately recently. I always said Jerry was a ball writer down in Texas, and a ball writer, I mean baseball. And Jerry would never take you apart with opinion. He always did it with facts. I was always impressed with that. He didn't have to think up some clever insult if he wanted to criticize somebody. He had the facts to prove it. So he was. I mean, there's an incredible number of guys that I've looked up to in the business. That's for sure. Way back in Duluth, when I started, 1966. I was only there 4 months, but there was a guy named Davis Hellberg who had this great touch of writing. And I always remember saying, boy, I wish I could be as good as Davis Hellberg someday. But it was, I think I learned more about writing when I went on the baseball beat because it really exposed you to newspapers all around the country, which I hadn't been before. And there were some great ones, and the way they went about their business was always impressive to me.
Awesome. Last question that I have for you. What advice can you give to young adult students or people like me who want to get into this business?
Wow. It's such a completely different world now. It's the newspaper angle. The newspaper part of it is, fortunately for us, the Star Tribune here is still full staffed and doing well, but it's tough all around the country. But I would think become as smart as you can in the way they're presenting information now on the internet and other areas, which is something I'm not good at. But to make it now as a young person, you definitely have to be cutting edge there, and you have to understand even when they say war, what do they mean? When I say war, In baseball, I say, okay, Henry Aaron had a good WAR. Willie Mays had a good WAR. So I need WAR to tell me that they were good players. I watched them, but the eye test doesn't work anymore. People want information, and for the younger people, I would say that's the way to go. But if old guy like me, I don't change my ways. But once many years ago, I have a tendency to kind of drift to get to the subject of my columns. I kind of give you a little history lesson, and there's usually a punchline down there. But many years ago, I had my sports editor, maybe 20 years ago, said, "We got an editor in here, and the new editor. I've never seen a guy who wants the nut graph more at the top. He wants where you're going right at the top of the story." And my reaction was, boy, he's got an adjustment to make. I wasn't going to change. That guy had to change. So anyway, but with the younger generation, certainly I watch them in action, and information that is proved with numbers is very important.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time again. And I want to congratulate you again on your award. Thank you for your time being here with me today.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.